Dear human, dear soul, I welcome you to my podcast series, Conversations with the Universe. Since a near-death experience, I have the gift to communicate with subtle levels of the cosmos. The knowledge from these for us invisible forms of energy I capture in my books, and it is now a great pleasure for me to share this knowledge, these conversations, with you as a supplement to the books. Please excuse me if the terms and articulations are not perfect. Our mother tongue is German, but we try to translate it to the best of our abilities. Thank you. My dearest friend and teacher, you said yesterday that we are now getting to the more mobile levels while staying on the topic of the deceased. Please tell us, how do I have to imagine this? Do you move up, down, sideways, backwards in this kind of space? How exactly do you move into the other realms?
My dear Sylvia, I think it is very important that we define the description of this space very clearly. It would cause far too much confusion if this issue was not described in more detail. Therefore, I would like to do that briefly. The cosmos is energy. Every single soul consists of an individual energy field which has detached itself from the mother soul, but nevertheless collects different experiences in connection with it and the source. This is how this energy enters different areas of matter. You once defined the different frequency ranges for this. It is a fact that every soul and all other energy in the cosmos can change its radiation and thus its frequency. To make this a conscious act is my wish, my intention for what we are doing here. How the radiation of the frequencies is transformed by subconscious thoughts or fears creates a feeling of powerlessness. But this is only an illusion. Likewise, how we perceive the different states is an act of the conscious or subconscious action of such a soul energy. The cosmos consists of different frequency ranges. This is the essence. The most important thing you have to understand when we talk of spaces. Just as each individual soul has a different radiation, a different frequency, the cosmos has different frequency fields, depending on the power potential. The individual energy of your own soul, it moves to the area that is appropriate for it in terms of resonance. It is similar to birth, which does not happen by chance on a specific day or a specific moment on earth. This moment harmonizes in resonance with your soul's frequency. It harmonizes with the soul's radiance, the soul's power, which is in you. The same is true for the state of transition as well as afterwards. Souls, just like any other energy, are therefore always in the range that resonates harmoniously with their energetics, their radiance, their frequency. Ultimately, all this is part of a very large energy field.
Yes, we once talked about the fact that there are just different qualities in this energy field, in the one big energy field, just as there are sometimes different qualities of water in the sea.
Yes, that's one way to describe it.
Good, please keep talking.
So now when I go into the different realms, I have to change my frequency without changing my perception.
You have mentioned that before. Is that exhausting?
No. But it takes concentration and attention.
I see. Back to my original question. So you have changed your frequency in order to perceive the realm of the deceased, and then you continue to move on in the realm of found another realm. Please describe how exactly this movement took place.
Let me briefly outline the method of locomotion in a little more detail.
Please do so.
I move through these areas by virtue of my soul, as if by the power of thought. But in the end, it is not my thoughts, but my feelings, which in turn reflect my soul power.
Oh, I find this very surprising. Can souls have feelings? I mean, are they really guided by their feelings? I thought it was the mind, the awareness that directs souls. Please expand on this.
Gladly. Every single detail is important in order to grasp the big picture.
Interesting. Please go ahead.
What you said is correct. It is ultimately the awareness, that which is the essence of a soul apart from its power of love force, that moves me, but nevertheless I experience it as a kind of feeling.
I see. I'm just trying to feel what you feel and how you move, but I still have to differentiate it a bit. Because what I sense as awareness, as clarity in you, is not the only thing that moves you and makes up this so-called feeling. It is also the quality of love.
What a beautiful remark. Of course, it is also the power of love in me, which goes hand in hand with the soul power, the soul potential. You yourself have formulated the credo. Love and consciousness are both subtle elements, just as fire, air, water, and earth are the elements of planet Earth. So my two tools are these two elements, and they operate together. And these two tools in turn direct my soul power.
Okay. So you move based on these two elements, and that feels similar to feeling as we experience it in the body.
Yes.
So when you move, it means you change your frequency, actually.
Yes, Sylvia. Of course, my frequency, let us stick to this term because it is from the area of physics and should therefore be understandable to most people. On principle always remains the actual power that is me. But steered by my consciousness, it can vary. As with a lamp that you can dim, I can transform my power so that I perceive differently. And this is how I get into this other frequency range, while remaining myself in my actual potential. This means that I always remain attentive to other impulses that are outside of this set range. And this is how, in the very static area, I sometimes perceived moments of light flashing from another area. Picture it like a ray of sunlight that suddenly illuminates the area.
This is fascinating.
Picture it as if you were in this sea of static soul energies, observing, exploring, and walking, and suddenly a warm, very bright beam of light hits you.
Ah, I see. And this beam naturally caught your attention, and you wanted to know what it is.
Exactly. I noticed this again and again at different intervals and naturally became curious.
Okay, but wait a minute. Where did the beam come from? From above? From below? From the left? From the right? How can I picture this?
It is a radiance through the space without a source. This light has no source, but is always there. Well, of course there is a source, but you cannot recognize it as such. It radiates, it illuminates everything, without revealing its source as such. But we will get to this subject where exactly the source becomes apparent much later. Yet it is important for you to know now that this light appears briefly in this static area, only to disappear again.
But that makes it even harder for you to know where you want to go. I mean, you can't really focus on where the light is from. So where do you go? Where does it take you? I mean, you have to formulate an intention, don't you?
That is true. But in my case, I only had to widen my perception a little and try to increase the frequency so that my energy would move and find itself in the level of the deceased who had more energy within them, the brighter realm of the deceased.
So you just need to decide to say, I want to follow this light impulse.
Mm-hmm.
You open yourself up, and then you can simply move there by virtue of your primal energy, by virtue of your primal power potential. Or is it more letting yourself be moved there?
I moved there.
But what exactly was your decision? Did you say, I want to visit the place from which this light originates? What exactly was the intention?
Well put, dear. I directed my attention and focused to the power which radiated that light and formulated the intention to get to where that light resides.
So when you formulated this intention by virtue of your power potential and awareness, you were drawn there. Is that how it works?
I followed the feeling that came with this intention.
Okay. This is a bit hard to understand in a world where you can only move linearly, but fine. I can more or less grasp the concept if I step outside this linear imagination. Another thing I would like to know on the subject of feelings, what kind of feelings is it when you move from one plane to another plane?
This is a wonderful and very important question. And one which I was going to answer in regards to the other level, by the way. That level of the static waiting room, or let's say relatively static waiting room, is very slow and unpleasant for me, as if everything was happening at decreased speed. It is tedious and somewhat uncomfortable for me, so I cannot stay there for very long. I think it's because my frequency is very fast and flexible, and if I slow it down to this relatively static, slow and rigid range, I cannot feel comfortable, as it is a manipulation of my actual power. But when I, and this is the answer to your original question, then formulated this resolution, this intention, to get to this other plane that was more filled with light, the plane of the beam, it felt very stimulating, like butterflies in your stomach.
Oh, that is beautifully put. In the end, it was your decision to increase your frequency again, and that is, of course, somewhat nicer, a liberating act. And that is stimulating, isn't it?
Yes.
I see. Have you ever wondered why these beams, these flashes of light, appeared in the waiting room of the static souls from time to time?
No.
Really? I would be very interested to know. How does it work and why does it happen?
My answer to that is very simple and sure to be correct. Because that is the essence of all being. The levels always work in connection with each other. Nothing is really separate from each other. And therefore they are of course always connecting elements.
Yes, but don't you want to know why flashes of light appear from another plane? I find that very fascinating.
I think this is directed by different movements of the souls.
Mm-hmm.
The plane I then entered was full of soul energies, which shone much brighter, more powerfully and joyfully. Their colors were more varied, their movements a little faster, generally everything seemed livelier, even though there was no difference to the amount of soul energies compared to the other area. And I also realized that smaller flashes of light appeared whenever one of these soul's energies moved. Perhaps when it incarnated, or when a very brightly radiating energy came out of the body into the plane. I do think that this is also directed by these transitions.
Okay, that makes sense. After all, the souls which step out of the body don't immediately reach the other frequency levels, but sometimes need to cover a certain distance on their way. They might stumble up in the area of the very static waiting room. Could this be maybe the moment when this light
No,
appears?
no. Please be careful not to confuse these two things. Souls leaving their body merely materializes this power of the souls in itself, bundles and focuses it, and they travel their respective area. The fleshing was something greater than the soul forces, greater than these movements of the souls. It was more cosmic. Nevertheless, I believe it is related to the impulses of the souls in that particular area. But I don't like to assume things. I like to examine them. This is a question I had not really asked myself yet. This is why I don't really have an answer to it. I just have this guess. But, as you would say, it is not logical for a soul energy to produce such powerful flashes from one plane that they can be perceived all the way in another plane. It can only happen due to a certain impulse together with other energetics. And that is something I cannot yet answer here. But I will try to find out.
Please, that would be highly intriguing. What about the other way around? The dark plane does not send darkness into the bright one, does it? It hasn't taken away its light or cast shadows?
Exquisite. Your questions are invitorate, dear. Okay. Step by step. Light is energy, right?
Yes.
And where there is little energy, no light can radiate. Or let us say, can only radiate less. The cosmos will always consist of energy and therefore will always carry light. But less light cannot have an effect on the bright light. This law applies both in the area of gross matter as well as that of subtle matter, namely that the bigger force displaces the smaller one.
Okay, I just thought the souls in the area of the brighter waiting room can perceive the others in the darker area of the waiting room.
No, Sylvia, it is not really like that. The brighter level of the deceased, the more mobile level of the deceased, is very clear and radiantly bright in itself. You have to imagine it like another small world, which works self-contained. It is only the decision, the intention of a particular soul and its inherent power potential that can make it possible for a soul to leave this realm. But it requires this decision. If a soul is fulfilled and recognizes its area as fulfilling and right, then there is no impulse to move away from there. You must not forget this. The way you set impulses in life, to do this and to do that, to create and to have to do things, does not exist in the subtle. Souls are either fulfilled or they are not. But if they are not, then usually their perception is so clouded that they unfortunately do not have the strength to move to where they would be more fulfilled. But that takes us back to a whole other topic. We had already touched on that. All I want to say is that the souls are basically very content in their respective levels, especially in the brighter levels. This is the case here in this brighter plane that I have just been describing. That is why most of these energies are there and accepted as it is.
Well, but that was not my question, my dear friend. I only wanted to know whether they also perceive the other level in this state.
No. That would require a decision, just as I had to decide to perceive the other levels. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have perceived them.
So it is definitely necessary to direct your energy, and through this manipulation it is possible to get to know other areas. But if you don't do that because you don't want to, then you don't even notice them, right?
Right.
I see. I understood that. I would have thought that when you are in this brighter level, you wander around a bit, look around a little, and can then perceive other energies, qualities.
Yes, that is the case. But it is like the clouds in your sky, or like birds, or anything else you perceive in your firmament. Just because you see it, it doesn't mean you want to go there, no?
Well, but hang on. There is a difference between seeing things, for instance, perceiving them, and not noticing them at all. So in a way, I do perceive the other levels then, don't I?
Well, no, and yes, and no again. It is all a question of your own perception. Some souls can, of course, still perceive the other energy qualities, just as I have perceived the light flash in the waiting room of the static souls. But I suspect that the lower frequencies are not as flexible as my mind, and therefore do not perceive the other energy levels, at least not consciously.
Okay, I do summarize. It is possible to perceive them, but it is up to you whether you perceive them. In principle, however, the cosmos is divided up so that the respective energies perceive their area as a whole, and that's a good thing. And it is right that they feel comfortable there.
Exactly.
Now, let's go into this bright area. So you arrived there. What exactly did you encounter there? You said the souls had more colors and were more powerful, moved more, right? Were the forms there all the same, or could you also see some deformations there?
No. There the fields of the individual soul's energies were much more balanced, more powerful and healthier. Their movements within these fields seemed happier, more joyful, more loving, and several even perceived me.
Wow. Did you talk? Did you talk to them? Tell me more about that.
You don't communicate on the subtle level with words, dear, as you know. But we perceived each other.
But there must be some kind of communication.
Yes, of course. But my way of communicating is higher vibrating and was not perceived by them as such. They merely noticed my presence.
And how do you know that they noticed you?
Because they reacted when I came near them.
By changing their color, by bouncing? How exactly did they react?
They changed their color, shone even brighter for a moment, as if they were happy to perceive me.
Wow. When I do a session with deceased people, regardless on which level they are, I can communicate with them. Why couldn't you communicate with them? I don't understand that.
Because my frequency simply doesn't have that potential. I can touch them. I can experience their frequency. But I cannot communicate with them the way you can.
That's too bad. I don't understand that, but maybe it is only the case in that particular level.
That's right. I was able to communicate in other levels.
Look, these are the details we need. So these deceased just lingered there and you walked among them, and some responded to you and some didn't, right?
Right.
So you went to both of these worlds without any goals. What is that like? Isn't that boring?
Sylvia, if there is nothing for you to do for a while, you find it boring, isn't it? Forget about any kind of wanting and move into the sensation of being. These souls have come to this state from a body in gross matter to recover in some way. They are resting. They don't want to do anything. They just want to be. Until the impulse strikes them to begin the next incarnation. By the way, this is true for both realms of the deceased, so it is correct to say that they are both in a kind of waiting room, because they are waiting for the impulse that can only come from within them, And only when this impulse comes is the energy big enough to move them from this level into a body.
Okay, this is very interesting. That means from this level, from these areas that you have just described, they can only move into the material level of the bodies. They incarnate again. Can't they say that they want to go to the next higher levels?
No. That is simply not possible. Purely for energy reasons. Only the downward movement into the frequency area of gross matter is possible. Into an area further down, not higher up. This is a very important law, which is meant to show you once more the movement of souls is always and exclusively connected with its respective power, which cannot increase on the subtle level, at last not without extraordinarily big effort. It is the potential of an incarnation to change this power potential. Unfortunately, however, this does not only happen in one direction. This is exactly where personal responsibility takes effect, so that you do not lose more energy in the incarnation, but work on gaining energy. Then, after the transition, all kinds of possibilities open up, completely new areas.
Okay, I see. The souls are all kind of waiting there until they can or want to incarnate again. How is that directed? Surely this is exclusively based on the power of free will, but there are some who still have a lot of unfinished business and must incarnate, don't they?
No. Even there, guided by free will, they can only ultimately make the decision to settle, correct and balance out the unfinished business, as you call it.
Knowing this, I see life more and more as a very valuable tool, a very precious chance that the cosmos gives us.
Oh yes, dear, that's right.
Wow. On the other hand, of course, there is no judgment regarding the area in which you end up as a soul.
No, there's absolutely no judgment.
But some people would like to experience something else instead of remaining in the level of the deceased.
Yes, I know, that's curiosity and growth.
Let's go back to the level where they are all a little healthier. Do you feel that they communicate with each other?
Oh yes, definitely. Perceive each other, and I also believe that they communicate with each other. There the feeling of loneliness should not really be an issue for the souls. They are not alone, they are connected. In exchange with the others, they seem more joyful, they seem peaceful and loving.
And did you also perceive an additional plane from this level?
No.
Really? So there were no flashes of light from yet another plane?
No.
Ah, okay. What about the white spheres? I remember that you can call the white spheres for help.
Yes, but the deceased do this less, as they do not even notice the spheres.
Then the white spheres, if they come into play, are more likely to be sent from above, from other levels, right?
Right.
Okay, so to summarize, in this level, you ultimately perceived only this level. No other impulses from the outside, no landscapes, no trappings. It was just the way it is.
Exactly.
Okay, and you say that those were the two worlds of the deceased.
Yes. These two frequency ranges are where the deceased reside when they resonate with one of these ranges. Souls that vibrate with a higher vibration, such as yourself, will perceive other levels because you are powerful in your spiritual force. But more on that later.
So we can tell people that they should trust that depending on how they have taken care of their soul in their lifetime, this will be formative for their perception after the transition. If they were full of fears, meaning they were mainly stuck in their ego, they will find themselves in a different area, in a different frequency perception than if they were just full of love, full of light, full of joy in their life. These two rough classifications are important, right?
Yes, very well described.
Well, some religions in our world teach us, if you do this, you will end up in paradise. And if you do that, you will end up in hell. I don't really like this passing of judgment at all. But what you are describing right now is quite similar in a way.
Again, my dear, yes and no. These religions work with fears and feelings of guilt and anything which can be used negatively on the human spirit. All I want, and I will keep stressing this, is to emphasize personal responsibility. It's your own responsibility which steps you take in your life. Whether you take care of your soul energy in your life or not. Whether you nourish it, whether you deal with spiritual things or not. Whether you stay purely materialistic, whether you do things that cost you energy or things that fulfill you, make you very happy, very joyful, and so much more. All of that is your own responsibility and without any judgment. I only want to point out what these things mean.
This reminds me of, will you take the red pill or will you take the blue pill from the movie Matrix?
Yes, but this is not about pills, dear.
I know.
Please do not distort this intention of mine. Just for our listeners. It's very simple. Be aware of your steps. Take them lovingly, joyfully, and in connection with all that is. Then your energy will not decrease. And that is all there is to say about it.
Well, if I didn't know so many people who 99% of time do everything possible to waste their energy, to lose it, then I would even be able to accept that without judgment. But unfortunately, most people only lose energy. And when you approach them with spiritual topics, they look at you strangely, as if you had escaped from a lunatic asylum. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. To a large extent, they are not even up to increasing their power, not even interested in it.
Dear Sylvia, you need to let this go. You can't change these people. They have to do that from within themselves. Realized for themselves that they are the sole creators of their destiny and thus the keepers of their own energy, their greatest treasure. You do everything you can by recording these important words and contents here. But please, do not despair of these people. Do not read them, do not understand them, or are not even interested in them. This is not your field, nor your responsibility anymore.
I know. I'm just saying that it feels as if most of humanity is not only unaware of this issue, but actually not even really interested in it. I find that much worse. But well, this is only my assessment. Don't take this away from me. I am in a body, and every day I rub against this unawareness much more than you. And so there is more of a judgment.
I will let you have it, dear. And I do understand you. Because I used to feel the same way, believe it or not. That's why I withdrew, to just be completely with myself and the animals. Because they are very grateful and they perceive the energetics very differently. They perceive the energy fields, the invisible fields. To feel this resonance covered me in much joy. This was not the case with people. Oftentimes you keep giving, but feel that it is not noticed.
True. Well, my dear friend, then I think we are done with this area, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you from the bottom of my heart for yet again a very, very beautiful, interesting insight. And I look forward to the next chapter. Thank you. Love.
Thank you, Sylvia. Love.